everyone, my name's David, and I'm a time traveler. Probably you think I'm crazy or something, like I kinda been watching science fiction series for too long. But no, you can even find some of my photos on several popular websites about time traveling. Are you intrigued? Well, then make sure you watch this video to the end, and you're gonna learn why I don't need a TARDIS or a DeLorean to travel in time. But first things first, I'll start my story from the top. When I went to college and moved from my parents to live in a dorm, I suddenly realized I really needed to find a part-time job. First, because I didn't feel cool when I was constantly asking my parents for money. Second, there appeared some expenses in my life that, let's just say, I didn't feel okay to ask them for money. For example, I needed some money to take a girl out to a cafe or a movie. And anyway, working part-time and studying, that's quite okay. Many guys do that. And besides, fast food restaurants are always in a great demand of employees. They are always happy to accept young and inexperienced students. Some of them even do some careers there later on. I was about to join KFC or something. Suddenly, a more interesting option occurred in my life. The fact is, our college was one of the oldest in the state. It had beautiful stone buildings, stairs, and arches. Sometimes, I even thought I studied at Hogwarts. That is why they constantly shot some TV shows and movies on the campus, so both teachers and students got used to it. Once there was some shooting again, and they needed a large crowd, girls and boys who were dressed in a special school uniform. According to the script, they were supposed to witness the quarrel of the main characters. A month before the shooting, this news appeared on our bulletin board. Like everyone could enroll in the crowd and join the shooting. But before, it was necessary to the movie managers to send them an email with your photos, age, and size. Thus, they would arrange the uniform for us. Me and my friends were always searching for some fun and action, so we were one of the first guys to enroll. Then, we started waiting for the shootings to begin. These shootings were so large scale that our college management even had to cancel all the classes. On the first day, we approached the costume designer and his managers. They handed us our uniform. The assistant director was standing next to her, looking carefully at each of us. As it turned out later, they needed a guy for a cameo part of the protagonist's friend. They did not want to look for an actor for a few seconds and pay him a fee, so they looked closely at those who signed up as extras. I wouldn't say I was unearthly handsome, but I had no reason to complain about my appearance either. I was still surprised when the assistant director came up to me and told me they had chosen me, because I fit them both in my type and my appearance. They introduced me to the main character and told me that according to the script, I needed to help him at a certain moment and take him to his room. It was all very simple. Of course, we rehearsed a couple of times, but it was more for the main character to prepare his lines. Anyway, the main character was supposed to stand up for the girl he loved, according to the scenario. The whole action took place in the campus, and the girl had been offended by some guy at school. The main character beats everyone up, but he gets beaten himself. And here I should appear. I pick him up from the ground, dirty and beaten, and then take him to the infirmary. We shot the scene several times. Then I wandered around in the crowd, like everyone else, making the appearance of a tortured schoolboy. By the way, I coped with this task perfectly. And who in the world would have thought that my so-called movie career would not end up there? Apparently, they registered us in the movie extras database. We had to create the crowd again, but in different places. They shot the episodes in the amusement park where the main characters had a date, then it was a movie theater, a shopping center, and so on. It was so fun. I even wished I studied acting in college instead of technology. I often saw the same people involved in extras, so we became friends with some of them and even communicated outside of the shootings. One of the extras' names was Candy. We became friends even though we had a big age difference. I was 17 and she was 23. I was a fresh student and she'd already graduated from college. Candy never had a permanent job, so she worked part-time in different places. She said she even starred in some commercials and had cameo roles in some movies. She showed me the videos with her parts. And one day, she came up to me with an interesting offer, or rather, it was a request. Her next part-time job was the part of the bride's sister at the wedding. I didn't understand at once what she meant, but she explained it later. The bride was from a rather poor family, coming from a small farming town. She was about to marry a wealthy, handsome man with a large inheritance. She totally did not want to show his parents her real family, so she decided to hire some actors who would play her family, her sister, brother, mom, dad, and grandma. As it turned out, there are even such agencies in the market that provide such services to people. They provide guests at the wedding who can be anyone for the bride and groom. I was curious, and I accepted Candy's offer. Besides, the wedding was supposed to be in a retro style, and I always loved theme parties, and I would be paid for that. That was a real dream job. It turned out all the guests were almost the same extras I met at the shootings, but now we had to play the parts of the bride or the groom's relatives at the event. And some of us even had to pronounce a touching speech for a toast. I played my part brilliantly. Maybe that's because a young lady who introduced herself as the owner of the so-called fake guests agency approached me at the end of the evening. She complimented me and handed me her business card, saying that she had an unusual job offer for me. If I made up my mind, she would be pleased to answer my call. I talked to Candy about it, and she was quite surprised. It turned out Miss Swan is very demanding of her employees, and if she liked me at the first sight, then I definitely have an acting talent. In addition, if you play some individual part instead of being mixed with the extras, you get double pay, and it's very profitable for a young student like me. The very next day, I called Miss Swan and we made an appointment. I was curious what kind of job offer she would make me. In my head, I went through a lot of options in advance, pretending to be someone's boyfriend for the prom, or like the heir to a deceased rich widow. But all my fantasies, even the most incredible ones, were nonsense compared to the position Miss Swan actually offered me. She said she had connections with the editors of a well-known newspaper in the country. They published the news about politics, economy, sports, culture, and they even had a column dedicated to paranormal activity. UFOs, quantum physics, witches, ghosts, and so on. This time, they wanted to publish a series of articles on time traveling. There are lots of movies about it, both science fiction and documentary ones, but there are quite few facts and real evidence that such trips could ever be possible. But when I asked her what her agency had to do with it, she smiled and said that's actually why she'd invited me. The newspaper's editor suggested the following. Someone from Miss Swan's agency puts on a suit from the 50s or 60s, goes to the subway, and walks past a lot of security cameras. Meanwhile, it was necessary to behave inconspicuously and act as suspiciously as possible at the same time. I needed to stare at the appearance of other people. I had to be surprised every time when seeing the gadgets in their hands, and always being stunned by the things that were atypical for the middle of the 20th century. The perfect scenario was to go down the subway, get out at the next station, walk to the nearest kiosk, buy a newspaper, and looking at the date, exclaim in a loud voice, "It cannot be!" Then I should dissolve with the crowd and disappear. So the main thing was to attract other people's attention. Well, yeah, the plan seemed ridiculous from an average person's point of view, but I was sure I would make a strong impression on passersby. And the newspaper's editors were supposed to describe this event in the city as a real miracle and time-traveling phenomenon. Miss Swan said when she saw me wearing a retro suit at the wedding, she immediately realized I was the perfect candidate for a time traveler part. If I put on a retro suit, a raincoat, and a hat, I would easily pass for a young researcher who had managed to make a real breakthrough in science and overcome the time. The whole adventure seemed so funny to me that I immediately accepted the offer. The agency's fee for such an adventure in time was another pleasant bonus for me. Miss Swan asked me not to tell anyone about it, and in case city cameras caught my face, I should act stunned and tell everyone that it could be my grandpa who used to be a scientist. By the way, he was a physicist, so the things somehow just perfectly matched here. I felt very excited and worried before my first mission. No one could predict the reaction of other people to my sudden appearance and my suspicious behavior. According to the agency's instructions, I was not supposed to talk to anyone. I was supposed to silently ignore all the questions as if I did not understand the language spoken by other people. Well, somehow it would be believable. The language changes too fast with the time. They were just afraid my modern speech and pronunciation would immediately give me away. The silent guest from the past is even more mysterious than a talking one. They made a perfect suit for me and changed my hair a little. I found a picture of my grandpa in an old family album. I tried to look like him as much as possible. I even thought if my granny saw me, she wouldn't know us apart. We decided that our time travel would start in one of the old quarters of our city, where there are still some houses built in 50s and 60s. At the appointed time, I went in an old building in completely ordinary clothes. I wore a cap and a tracksuit. I changed there and left the place being the guest from the past. For the first few minutes, no one paid any attention to me at all. Everyone was in a hurry to go about their business. Most people buried their face in the smartphone screens. But it only did me a favor. I slowly walked to the subway. I pretended I did not immediately figure out how to buy a ticket for one trip from the vending machine. I silently watched other people doing it and then repeated their actions. And here, of course, some people saw a strange guy, me, wearing an old raincoat and watching others buying tickets. Some of them looked at me puzzled. Wow, that was awesome. I guess it would be strange if they still didn't react to me at all. After I finally bought the ticket, I even pretended I failed several times when I was using the vending machine. I went down to the subway, took my seat, and started to stare at people curiously, watching their unusual appearance, smartphones, and so on. I even looked at the newspaper of the man sitting next to me. He got a little angry and moved aside. After a couple of stations, everyone in the car started staring at me. I felt terribly uncomfortable, so I immediately decided to get off and go upstairs. After all, I had another mission, to hang around the kiosk and buy a newspaper. I got off the subway station, but unfortunately there were no kiosks nearby. So I just went for a walk, hoping to find one of them. I stared at the shop windows. I looked at the supposedly weird clothing models for me. I looked at the people sitting behind the coffee shops and the restaurant windows. Anyway, I was definitely on a roll. The final act of my performance started when I found a kiosk after a long walk in the city. I approached the stand with the press. I picked up the first newspaper I saw. I looked at the date and exclaimed the prepared line, "I did it! I did it!" Then I rushed towards residential buildings direction. My task was to hide in some deserted place, call the agency manager who would bring me the normal clothes, and change. I quickly turned into one of these narrow streets, hid behind the trees, and called the manager for help. I couldn't believe my first mission was so successful. Not only I completed all the tasks planned, I did even more. I was very interested how, in fact, people reacted to my appearance in the city. It was important for me that all the play was not in vain. But as soon as I got back to my dorm, Miss Swan started sending me some tweets from different users who claimed they witnessed a real time traveler who came from the past. Someone wondered whether some studio was shooting another science fiction film nearby. Some people thought this was a promo of already filmed series. Others thought it was just a prank. But there were also those people who claimed they actually witnessed something paranormal. Then, our customers, the newspaper editors, did not miss the moment and made a retweet of one of these messages, asking everyone who noticed a strange man in a raincoat on the city streets to leave their comments and call the editor's office. And you won't believe it, but this tweet collected several hundred comments. My description, some smeared photos, someone even estimated the route of my movements around the city. The subway security service also took part in the whole action, providing the police and the newspapers some short recordings from the surveillance cameras where I got spotted. We played like clockwork. That was brilliant work. The next day, Miss Swan called me and thanked me. She said the customer was willing to pay me even more than the amount promised because I over-executed the plan. I was so happy. And if you think that this was a one-time adventure, then you're mistaken. I also thought this was going to be for the first and last time. The newspaper editors liked the effect of time traveling so much that they decided to arrange a few more outings, but this time in other cities and states, and in different clothes. Well, the legend was our guest from the past did not calm down after his first successful experience and decided to experiment on. I happily agreed to continue this adventure. I have never had such an experience in my whole life. Supposedly, I will never have a chance in the future. Today, some popular science websites uploaded my photos and footage from the CCTV cameras. Experts and scientists are seriously arguing about the time travel theory, and many users try to figure out which year I came from. Surprisingly, no one yet has recognized the mysterious man in the hat. Even my friends now discuss the rumors about the mysterious time traveler. Would you believe it if you saw the news about time travel? If you saw a person like me in the street, would you think I was a time traveler? Do you think time jumps really exist, or are they just inventions of Hollywood directors and screenwriters? Write your answers in the comments below and let's discuss it. I hope you've enjoyed my story. Don't forget to click the like button and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you've clicked the bell to turn on notifications. And stay tuned and never miss new videos. See you in the future, or the past, or whatever. Bye!